James Neiswanger has been the Chief of Police of the Holyoke Police Department since 2011 and has been in law enforcement for 34 years. Under his leadership, the Holyoke Police Department applied for and received a DMH Police-Based Jail Diversion Program grant in 2013 to develop a Crisis Intervention Team, or CiT. Today, almost all of his officers have been trained in CiT. Lieutenant Manny Reyes has been a member of the Holyoke Police Department for nearly 20 years, and he's been their CiT coordinator since the program began. Lieutenant Reyes is a veteran of the Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom campaigns and is still in the Air Force Reserve. He's also the police liaison for the Western Mass Veterans Treatment Court. You want to start, Chief Neiswanger?
Good morning, everyone. And first off, Earl, we're happy to have coffee and bagels with you any day of the week. Today, or even when you were 12 years old, even though that didn't seem like possible. It's an honor and privilege to be here. When I started in policing a couple years ago, about 34 years ago, they issued me a set of handcuffs, a uniform, a badge, and a revolver, and they said, "Go forth, kid. Go police, do good police work." They didn't even send me to the police academy. They said, "We'll get you in there 6 months or so down the road." So I was left to go out on the streets and try to bumble my way along. Thank goodness that times have changed. Today the training is much better, the equipment is much better, and officers are not bumbling themselves along trying to figure out how to do the job on the job training. Holyoke, I'm sure most of you know, is a city with many challenges. We certainly face budget challenges like everyone else. We have a high poverty rate. Unfortunately, we have a high crime rate. The men and women of the Holyoke Police Department do a great job every day, working hard to keep our citizens safe. But there are certainly challenges. But I can tell you the Holyoke Police Department cannot do it alone. Absolutely not. We need partnerships, and that's what this is all about. Whether it be our partnerships with the Department of Mental Health, which we truly appreciate, and John Barber, who's a force in of himself, whether it's the Behavioral Health Network with Matt Leone, who's a major asset, whether it's the Holyoke Medical Center itself, and all our other partners. We could not possibly do this alone. And, as it was explained earlier, we were able to get a jail diversion grant back in 2013. I am a big fan of crisis intervention training for police. And I gotta tell you, part of it is for selfish reasons. One of the worst things an officer could ever have to do is to have to discharge his firearm, which could potentially result in the loss of life. That's the last thing I want any officer to do. I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, suicide by cop, but it does exist, unfortunately. Someone's experiencing a mental health crisis, an officer rushes to the scene to save them, and then a lethal force encounter happens. What the heck did we do? We just screwed that up. That's what crisis intervention training is about. Now, this is not an official number. It's my calculated guess. But if you looked across this country of ours, I would venture to guess probably 30% of the officer-involved shootings involve someone in a mental health crisis. If we could just manage those situations better, and that's what crisis intervention training is all about. It teaches the officers to de-escalate, it gives them strategies, and at the end of the day, we get the person who's having the mental health crisis the help they need. And the officer survives that encounter. He doesn't have to deal with the guilt of going to try to help someone and it didn't turn out that way. He doesn't have to deal with the litigation afterwards. So like I said, I'm very selfish about that, but that's why I'm a big fan of crisis intervention training. And I can tell you it works. It saves lives. It's also changed attitudes of some of my most seasoned officers. I wish the CiT training, that 40-hour block training, at some point would become mandatory in all police academies across the country. I know this kind of is like, I know this is a novel concept, but teaching officers how to talk to people, what a great concept, right? So in addition to the regular CiT training, we've been fortunate enough to launch a crisis intervention re-engagement team, where we're going out on a weekly basis with plainclothes officers and assistants from the Behavioral Health Network. We're actually re-engaging people that have been in crisis before, and we're checking up on them to see if they have enough services, and is there anything else we can do for them. Can you imagine the shocked look when a police officer comes out to help them? Not only does the person benefit from that, my officer benefits from that. It humanizes us. It makes us a better police department and a better community, and it helps us all as we move forward. I tell you, we are very lucky to have the critical important training of crisis intervention training, and we're very fortunate to have the partnerships we do have, because it does make a difference. And moving forward, we're hoping to do more, because we never do enough.